The gunshot echoed through the private dining room like a cork ripped from hell. Crystal glasses shattered. Someone screamed. A man stumbled back, clutching his chest, red blooming through his pressed white shirt. I stood frozen near the doorway, heels planted on marble, heart hammering so violently it blurred my vision. The smell of gunpowder mixed with expensive cologne and fear. My father's voice cut through the chaos, furious, panicked, unrecognizable. "You don't understand what you're doing," he shouted. But I did. For the first time in my life, I understood everything. 3 hours earlier, my phone buzzed while I was staring out over downtown Chicago. 40 floors up, the city spread beneath me like something I finally owned. Family dinner, 7 p.m., urgent. Frank Lawson. No congratulations, no proud of you, just a summons. Frank Lawson hadn't come to my wedding. Didn't bother with an excuse until 10 minutes before I walked down the aisle alone. But the morning every financial network splashed my name beside a $580 million valuation, suddenly I existed again. Funny how money resurrects fathers. I almost didn't go. Almost stayed with my husband, Noah, who knew the look on my face meant old scars were tearing open. But I needed to see him. Needed to watch the moment he realized I was no longer asking for approval. I was holding leverage. On the drive to the country club, rain streaked the windshield like the city itself was trying to wash me away. My mother texted once. "Please be gentle with your father. He's under a lot of pressure, he always was." Somehow, that pressure never bent him toward me. I parked, stepped out into the cold, and straightened my coat. Inside my bag was a thin leather folder, contracts, signatures, numbers that had quietly rewritten our family hierarchy overnight. Frank thought he'd called me to dinner. He had no idea I was arriving to close something permanent. When I pushed open the dining room door, they all looked up at once. My father. My mother. My older brother, Ryan. Men who once made me feel small without ever raising their voices. "Sit down," Frank said, already irritated. "We need to talk." I smiled, calm and deliberate. "Oh," I said, moving closer to the table. "I know." And as I reached into my bag, the room held its breath. Seconds before everything detonated. No one spoke for a full 3 seconds after I said it. "I know." The room seemed to tighten, like the walls had leaned in to listen. My father studied me the way he always had. Measuring, dismissive, already convinced he was ahead of the board. He gestured to the empty chair. "Sit," he said again, slower this time. "This isn't a performance." I didn't sit. Ryan shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking between us. My mother reached for her glass, missed it, steadied her hand. Small tells. I notice things now. "You're doing very well for yourself," my father continued, smoothing an invisible wrinkle in his sleeve. "Which is good. It means this conversation can be productive." There it was, the word he used instead of love. "I didn't come to negotiate my worth," I said. "You called me." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "Our family has a problem. Temporary, liquidity, timing." He smiled thinly. "Nothing that can't be solved." "With my money," I said. Silence again. He didn't deny it. Ryan leaned forward. "You don't understand the scale of what Dad's dealing with. These properties are already being dealt with," I cut in. My father's eyes sharpened. "What does that mean?" I finally set my bag on the table. The sound was soft, but it landed harder than anything else in the room. I opened it slowly, deliberately, letting the moment stretch. "You taught me something growing up," I said, "that whoever controls the paper controls the outcome." I slid the first document across the polished wood, then another, then another. My father didn't touch them at first. He stared, scanning just enough to recognize formatting, signatures, letterheads he knew too well. His color shifted, not panic yet. Calculation. "This is inappropriate," he said. "You've been misinformed." "Am I?" I asked. "Because the lenders didn't think so. They were eager, nervous, actually." My mother whispered my name, a warning wrapped in a plea. Ryan picked up one page, his face drained. "Dad?" That was the first crack. My father stood abruptly, chair scraping. "You went behind my back." "No," I said evenly. "I walked around you. You never noticed." The room vibrated with something unspoken, years of absence, of silence, of being overlooked suddenly pressing for air. "You wouldn't dare," he said. I met his eyes, calm, certain. "I already did." Something sharp snapped then, not loud, not visible, but final. A sound like a line pulled too tight giving way, and in that instant I understood this dinner was never about saving him. It was about whether he could survive losing control. Behind me, the door shifted slightly, as if someone had brushed past it in the hall. No one noticed, except me. I didn't turn around. The air behind me felt disturbed, like a door that hadn't fully closed. My father was still talking, something about betrayal, about loyalty, but his voice had lost its rhythm. He sensed it too. When a man who's ruled rooms his entire life starts losing control, he feels it before he sees it. "Who else is involved?" he demanded, redirecting. A reflex. If he could identify the threat, he could contain it. "Everyone who matters already signed," I said. Ryan pushed his chair back halfway, caught between standing and sitting. "This is insane. You can't just rewrite decades overnight." "Decades built on delays, unpaid work, and borrowed time," I replied. "That's not a legacy, that's erosion." My mother finally spoke, voice trembling but sharp. "You're enjoying this." I looked at her then. Really looked. Pearls, perfect posture, hands folded like restraint was a virtue. "No," I said, "I'm ending it." That was when the door opened fully. A man stepped in. Mid-40s, neutral suit, no club blazer, no apology in his posture. He didn't look at me first, he looked at my father. "Mr. Lawson," he said calmly, "we need a word." My father stiffened. "This is a private dinner." "It stopped being private this afternoon," the man replied, placing a slim folder on the sideboard. "When certain timelines accelerated." The room tilted. Ryan swore under his breath. My mother stood, knocking her chair back. "Frank, what is this?" My father didn't answer her. His attention was locked on the folder, like it might bite if he moved too fast. "I told you we had time," he said quietly. Not to us, to himself. The man turned to me then, eyes steady. Recognition flickered, respect. "You must be Miss Lawson," he said. "We were told you might be present." "Told by whom?" my father snapped. "By the people who now have authority," the man answered. That word landed heavier than anything else said tonight. I felt it settle in my chest. Not triumph, not relief, but inevitability. This wasn't my confrontation anymore. It was the world catching up. The man continued. "There are procedural matters we need to address immediately, preferably without an audience." He glanced at my mother and Ryan. My father's face had gone still. Dangerous still. "Get out," he told the man. "Now." No one moved. Then my father turned to me, eyes burning. "You planned this." I shook my head. "I prepared for it. There's a difference." His hand tightened on the edge of the table. The room felt brittle, like one more word might fracture it beyond repair. Outside, somewhere down the hall, There was a sudden sharp noise. Metal on marble. Raised voices. The kind of disturbance country clubs weren't built to absorb. The man's phone buzzed. He checked it once, then looked up. "We're out of time," he said. My father took a step toward me, and that was when everything finally slipped. My father took one step toward me and stopped. Not because of anything I did, because the man by the sideboard lifted his hand, not aggressively, just enough to signal pause, the kind of gesture that came from years of being obeyed without raising his voice. "Frank," he said evenly, "this isn't a negotiation." The name sounded different in his mouth, smaller. "You don't get to walk into my life and—" my father started. "You walked into this," the man interrupted, calm as glass. "Months ago. You just didn't realize the door locked behind you." Ryan backed away from the table. "Dad, maybe we should—" "Sit down," my father snapped at him, then caught himself. Too sharp, too late. Control was leaking. My mother pressed a hand to her chest. "Frank, please, tell me what's happening." He didn't look at her. He was staring at me. "How long?" he asked quietly. "How long have you been setting this up?" I held his gaze. "Longer than you ever looked at me." That landed, not loudly, deeply. The man checked his phone again. "We need signatures tonight, or we proceed without cooperation." "You won't," my father said. "You can't." The man tilted his head. "That depends on how much attention you want." Silence rushed in, thick and suffocating. I felt it then, the shift, not victory, something colder. The realization that this wasn't about money anymore, it was about exposure, about doors opening that never closed again. My father straightened his jacket, the old reflex kicking in. "Let's be clear," he said, voice steady but hollow. "Whatever she thinks she's done, this stays in the family." "No," I said softly. "That's what you always said. And it never protected me. It protected you." Ryan looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. "You're blowing everything up." "I'm letting it collapse," I replied. "There's a difference." From the hallway came raised voices again. Faster this time. Someone arguing with staff. A chair scraping. The man's jaw tightened. "We don't have the luxury of another delay," he said. My father exhaled slowly. "You think this ends well for you?" I leaned in just enough for him to hear me, and only me. "It already has." That's when the lights flickered. Just once. A subtle dip, but everyone noticed. My mother gasped. Ryan swore. The man looked toward the door, and my father smiled. Not relief, not confidence. Something else. Something like a man who knew the room was about to change, and wasn't sure who would still be standing when it did. The lights steadied, but the room didn't. That brief flicker had done something irreversible. Like a signal no one else could see. The man by the sideboard stepped away from the wall, posture tightening, attention shifting outward instead of inward. "We're moving now," he said quietly. My father laughed once. Short, sharp. "You're bluffing." The sound from the hallway answered him. Voices rising, not panicked but urgent. The kind of urgency that comes when procedures override etiquette. Ryan moved to the window, looked down, froze. "There are cars outside," he said. "Not members." My mother's face had gone pale. "Frank, what did you do?" For the first time all evening, my father didn't have an immediate response. He adjusted his cuff, then his watch, stalling for seconds he no longer owned. "This is unnecessary," he said finally. "We can resolve this privately." The man met his eyes. That option expired. I felt something click into place. Not fear, alignment. Everything I'd prepared for, every contingency Lena had warned me about, every late-night call with legal teams suddenly made sense. This wasn't escalation. This was arrival. My father turned to me again, slower now, measured. You let strangers into this. You invited them, I said. I just answered when they knocked. Ryan spun toward me. You're enjoying watching him cornered. No, I said. I'm watching him experience what he built, a system where no one waits for explanations. The door opened wider. 2 more people entered, calm, efficient. They didn't look at me at all. That hurt more than it should have, and healed something at the same time. My father took a step back. Just one. But it was the first retreat I'd ever seen from him. This is a mistake, he said, voice lower. You think you've won. You haven't thought about what happens after. I stepped closer. I have. That's the difference. The man by the table slid a document forward. Sign, and this stays procedural. My father stared at the paper. His hand hovered over it, trembling, not from fear, but from the strain of holding himself together. From the hallway came that sharp sound again, not loud, decisive, like something heavy being set down. My father looked up at me one last time. You're tearing this family apart. I shook my head. You left it in pieces. I'm just deciding who owns what's left. His pen touched the paper. And in that moment I realized the noise from earlier, the one that started all this, had never been about destruction. It was the sound of something being finalized. The pen left the paper, not slammed, not thrown, just released. Like my father no longer trusted his hand to hold anything sharp. For a second, no one moved. Then the man collected the document, checked it once, and nodded. Thank you for your cooperation. The word tasted wrong in the room. My mother sank back into her chair as if her bones had been removed. Ryan stared at the table, jaw clenched, replaying every moment he'd ever assumed would end differently. My father straightened slowly. The posture was still there. The suit, the spine, the practiced authority, but something essential had gone missing behind his eyes. This isn't over, he said to me. Not a threat. A plea dressed as one. It is, I replied. For us. That hurt him, I could tell. Not because he cared about me, but because he'd never imagined a version of the world where his words didn't steer the outcome. The people in the room began to move with purpose now. Quiet instructions, phones out, doors opening and closing without ceremony. The country club felt suddenly smaller, like it had been exposed as a set instead of a fortress. Ryan finally looked up. What happens to us? I considered him. The brother who'd inherited attention without asking for it, who'd mistaken proximity to power for ownership. That depends, I said, on what you choose to do when no one's protecting you. My father let out a slow breath. You think this makes you different from me. No, I said, it makes me free of you. He flinched. The man by the door checked his watch. We need to clear the room. My mother stood unsteadily. She reached for my arm, then hesitated, as if unsure whether she was still allowed. Honey, she whispered, you didn't have to do it this way. I met her eyes. This is the only way you ever listened. That silence, hers, was louder than his had ever been. As we moved toward the exit, I felt it again, that awareness from earlier. A sense that the night hadn't finished unfolding yet. Just before the doors closed behind us, my father spoke one last time. You'll regret this. I paused, looked back at him, not with anger, not with triumph. With all due respect, I said calmly, I already survived you. The doors shut. And in the quiet that followed, I realized something unsettling. The danger wasn't behind me anymore. It was just beginning to reorganize. The drive home felt longer than it should have. Not because of traffic, because silence has weight when it's earned instead of feared. Noah didn't turn on the radio. He didn't ask questions. He just drove, steady hands on the wheel, letting the city lights slide across the windshield like passing thoughts I didn't need to chase. "You okay?" he asked eventually. I nodded, then shook my head. I don't know yet. That was the truth. Something had ended tonight, but endings don't always come with relief. Sometimes they leave a vacuum, and vacuums don't stay empty for long. When we got home, my phone was already lighting up. Missed calls, unknown numbers. One message from Lena, time-stamped 12 minutes earlier. "They're moving faster than expected. Call me." I felt that familiar tightening in my chest. Not panic, not fear, readiness. I called her back immediately. "Talk to me," I said. "They're not waiting for morning," Lena replied. Her voice was calm but clipped. "Your father made calls before dinner. Tried to shift assets offshore, lock things up. He didn't expect the counter to land this hard. And now people are nervous, the kind of nervous that makes mistakes." I closed my eyes. Images stacked in my mind. Accounts, signatures, half-finished maneuvers frozen mid-motion. "He's not done," I said. "No," Lena agreed. "And that's the problem. He's lost control, but he still thinks he understands the board." I looked out at the dark street below our balcony, peaceful, deceptively so. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "A decision," she said. "We can play defense, lock everything down, or we can move first." I thought of my father's smile when the lights flickered. The way he'd said, "You'll regret this." Not as a threat, but a prediction based on a lifetime of watching people hesitate. "We move," I said, cleanly. There was a pause. Then, "Okay, then you should know something else." My grip tightened on the phone. "One of the calls he made," Lena continued, "wasn't to a lender or a lawyer. Who then?" She exhaled. "Someone who doesn't usually get involved unless there's leverage or fear." The quiet in the apartment shifted, thickened. "Send me everything," I said, "now." When I hung up, Noah was watching me carefully. "It's not over." "No," I said. "But it's clearer now." I went to the desk, opened my laptop, and watched files populate the screen. Names, timelines, connections that had stayed invisible as long as my father felt untouchable. One line stood out. A date. Years ago. Long before my wedding. Long before my first property. A decision he'd buried. And suddenly, the sound from the dining room, the one that started all of this, made sense in a way I hadn't allowed myself to consider. This wasn't just about money, it never had been. And whatever my father was afraid of losing tonight, it wasn't me, it was the truth. I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because patterns were finally visible, and once you see them, rest feels irresponsible. By 4:12 a.m., Lena and I were on a secure call, documents layered across 3 screens. She walked me through timelines my father had tried to fracture. Shell entities, rushed authorizations, last-minute transfers that only made sense if you knew what he was trying to hide, not save. He wasn't protecting assets, she said. He was protecting a sequence. I leaned back slowly. From when? She highlighted a line. A year. An approval buried inside a redevelopment project that never broke ground. That's before my wedding, I said. Yes, she replied, and before your first acquisition, which means whatever this is, it predates you becoming useful to him. That landed harder than anything else. So all those years, the silence, the absence, the way he kept me at arm's length, it wasn't indifference, it was insulation. Noah appeared in the doorway with 2 mugs. He set one beside me without a word, read my face, then looked at the screen. "He didn't want you close," he said quietly. "No," I answered. "He wanted me clean." Lena didn't interrupt. "If I was distant," I continued, "then I was deniable. No overlap, no questions." "And now?" Noah asked. "Now," I said, eyes on the screen, "I own the overlap." At 6:30 a.m., the first external call came in. Not aggressive. Polite, curious. By 7:15 another, different firm, same tone. By 8 it was clear. The people my father had relied on were recalculating. Loyalty dissolves fast when it stops being profitable. Lena sent one final file. "This is the pressure point. If this goes public, not scandal, just context, the entire narrative flips." "Do it," I said. There was a pause. Once we do, there's no quiet ending. I looked at the city waking up outside my window. People starting their days, unaware of how fragile the structures above them really were. "I'm not interested in quiet," I said. "I'm interested in final." An hour later, my phone buzzed. "Dad," no subject, no greeting, just one line. "We need to talk." Alone. For the first time, I didn't feel pulled. I felt prepared. Because now I knew what he was really afraid of. And it wasn't losing everything. It was being seen for exactly who he'd been all along. I didn't answer his message. That alone felt like a structural failure in the universe he'd built. My father had always believed silence was his weapon. He'd never considered what it would feel like when it stopped working. By noon, the first article went live. Not an exposé, not an accusation, just a timeline, dry, factual, names, dates, transactions placed side by side in a way that removed all ambiguity. No drama, no adjectives, just context. The phone started ringing immediately. Lena called first. It's spreading faster than projected. "Who's pushing back?" I asked. "Everyone who waited too long," she said, "which means no one effectively." I watched the coverage multiply across screens. Analysts choosing their words carefully. Former partners suddenly unreachable. Old allies issuing statements that said nothing but implied distance. My father called again. Then again. By the 3rd time, his message changed. "You don't know what you're unleashing." I almost laughed. At 2:30, Noah came into my office and closed the door behind him. "There's someone downstairs." "Press?" "No," he said, "not officially." That narrowed it. I went down alone. The man waiting in the lobby wasn't angry. He wasn't nervous either. He carried himself like someone who expected doors to open eventually, one way or another. "I'm not here to threaten you," he said before I could speak. "I'm here to understand how far this goes." "That depends," I replied, "on who's asking." He smiled faintly. "Fair." We talked for 10 minutes about optics, about containment, about what happens when old decisions resurface without permission. He didn't defend my father. That told me everything. When I returned upstairs, Lena was waiting, expression tight. "He's trying to move again, not assets, influence. Let him," I said. "Influence only works if people are afraid of losing something." "And are they?" I thought of the calls that had stopped coming, the invitations quietly withdrawn. "No," I said, "they're afraid of being next." At 6 p.m., my father finally sent one last message. "Come see me. Tonight." I stared at it longer than I expected to. Not because I felt obligated, because I knew this was the moment everything either ended or calcified into something worse. I grabbed my coat. Noah touched my arm. "You don't owe him closure." "I know," I said. "This isn't for him." The house was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. No staff, no lights except one room on the ground floor. He was waiting there, smaller than I remembered. Older. The posture intact, but the confidence thinned. "You went too far," he said as soon as I stepped inside. "No," I replied. "I went where you never thought I would." He looked at me then, not with anger, not with dismissal, with calculation. "You think this ends me," he said. "It won't." I met his gaze. "I don't think about you that way anymore." That shook him more than any headline. Outside, a car slowed, then another. The world was already repositioning. And my father finally understood. Whatever came next, he no longer controlled the narrative. One part left, and nothing between us was unspoken anymore. He poured 2 glasses without asking. Water, not wine, not anything that softened edges. That alone told me how little room he felt he had left. "You always wanted answers," my father said, sliding one glass toward me. "Careful what they cost." "I already paid," I replied. I didn't sit. He watched me for a long moment, as if searching for the version of me he'd built his life around ignoring. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, stripped. It wasn't supposed to get this big. There it was. Not an apology, an explanation. The only currency he ever traded in. Years ago, he'd signed off on a redevelopment deal pushed through too fast, too carelessly. Corners cut, oversight deferred. On paper, it was brilliant. In reality, it created a chain reaction. Permits fast-tracked, inspections overlooked, money moved to bury risk instead of fixing it. When problems surfaced, he didn't stop, he insulated. "And you?" I asked. "Where did I fit into that?" He hesitated, just a fraction. "You were inconvenient," he admitted. "Too observant, too principled. If you stayed close, you might ask questions I couldn't afford." So he stayed away, missed events, missed milestones, missed my wedding. Not because he didn't care, because distance kept him safe. I felt something settle inside me then, not rage, not grief, resolution. "You didn't protect me," I said. "You protected yourself." He didn't argue. Outside, headlights swept across the walls, one car, then another, quiet arrivals, official ones. "You can still soften this," he said, standing now. "Delay, redirect, make it procedural." I shook my head. I already did, for years. I just didn't know it. The knock came, measured, inevitable. My father closed his eyes. When the door opened, no one raised their voice. No drama, just names confirmed. Timelines acknowledged. Processes activated. The kind of ending built on paperwork, not spectacle. As they led him away, he looked back once. "You got what you wanted," he said. I met his gaze, steady. "No," I answered. "I got what you took." The house felt hollow after they left, like a stage after the audience goes home. I stepped outside into the night air. Noah was waiting by the car. He didn't ask how it went, he just opened the door. Weeks later, the world moved on, as it always does. The story became a case study, a cautionary footnote. My company absorbed the properties, rebuilt them quietly, intentionally, places designed for rest, not dominance. My family stayed silent, and for the first time, so did the ache. One afternoon, standing in the lobby of our newest opening, I caught my reflection in the glass. Calm, unburdened, whole. I didn't win, I exited, and that, finally, was enough.